Good evening, Dungeon Masters. I'm Baron Durop. Figuring out how to balance encounters is a lot like learning to ride a bike. It requires lots of falling and scraped elbows at first, but once you get the hang of it, it becomes a thoughtless exercise. Unfortunately, the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide uses the concepts of challenge rating and the XP budget to teach encounter balance, which is a lot like learning to ride a bike without training wheels. These concepts require a lot of time and arithmetic, whereas training wheels would provide canned examples of what good encounters might look like for the freshman dungeon master. It might be surprising to learn, therefore, that the first edition of AD&D, released in 1977, which didn't even have the concept of challenge rating, provided level-appropriate encounters as an available solution. When Gary Gygax, Zeb Cook, and Steve Winter wrote the AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide, they created a series of tables with suggested encounters to stock dungeons on a per-level basis. Unfortunately, the way D&D has been played over the years has changed, and so these tables don't make much sense to a modern gamer without context and explanation. D&D used to be focused largely on delving into a dungeon complex to extract treasure, but nowadays players generally focus on much more narrative issues, and so typical dungeons aren't anywhere near as deep and complex as their 100-room, 6-level down forebears. Of course, that doesn't mean that there aren't any lessons to be learned from these older edition encounter tables. Based on the three authors' gaming experience, these AD&D writers compiled a list of encounters appropriate for each dungeon level. To reflect on the definition of the word encounter for a moment, an encounter 30 years ago was a group of monsters which were all loosely narratively connected, but might not be interacted with exactly at the same time. As an example of what this means, Matthew Colville's video walkthrough on how to make your first adventure, which I'll link to at the end of this video, follows this old school encounter definition. In Colville's adventure, there are a few goblins patrolling the area around the dungeon, 2 goblins guarding the front entrance, a few more goblins in the front room of the dungeon, and finally 3 or 4 more in the final boss room. One dungeon and its surrounding area contains a single encounter of a dozen goblins. In essence, a single encounter in this old school Gygaxian understanding describes how many monsters should be interacted with before it's reasonable for characters to take a long rest. The monsters will likely not be piled on top of one another in the same room, but they would all be within a location where they could interact with each other with relative ease. Take, for example, this first level recommended encounter of 2d6 plus 3 bandits. Obviously, throwing 10 or so bandits at a first level party would likely result in a total party kill, but this absolutely is an appropriate amount of bandits for a first level encounter understood through this AD&D philosophy. To iterate, imagine an adventure where a local merchant's cash box has been stolen by bandits that live in an old hunting lodge near a ruined watchtower. From those 10 bandits, you can have a man in a watchtower, 2 or 3 more hunting deer and collecting firewood, 4 or 5 gamblers in the lodge all playing cards together, and the bandit leader asleep in an adjacent room. All these bandits are in close enough proximity to alert each other to danger, but not cause immediate threat to the players at exactly the same time. If the player characters are spotted by the tower lookout, who blares his signal horn in response, the other bandits might fan out into the woods to look for the party, but it will at least be a few rounds of initiative before the party is discovered, and even more rounds before the rest of the bandits converge on the party members. Similarly, disrupting the bandits' game of cards in the lodge, assuming the party can sneak past the watchtower lookout, might be able to awaken the bandit leader in the next room, but it will take the bandit leader a turn or two just to join the fray, and will take even longer for the other bandits who are out hunting deer or in the watchtower, no matter how loudly the card-playing bandits signal the party's presence. To iterate, the players will likely have to contend with all the bandits before they can risk taking a long rest, but that doesn't mean that they have to encounter all 10 bandits all at the same time. Some of the alerted bandits might even come upon the party a few minutes later, while the players feel relatively safe and are picking over the first round of dead bodies for loot. The first edition AD&D Encounter tables were specifically designed for a world without death saves, where first-level wizards could cast just a single spell a day, and are regrettably filled with monsters that didn't make their way to the 5th edition basic rules. So, I made new tables for you to use. At a link in the description, you'll find a supplement of all the tables you can use to stock your dungeons and adventure locations with an appropriate amount of monsters for each character level. Once you run adventures using these tables for a few months, you'll start to develop a sixth sense for how powerful these monsters really are, how powerful your player characters are, and what you can really throw at them. You'll find that some of the encounters are a bit tough, and some are a bit weak, and that's by design. Regardless, none of the encounters are so strong that the player shouldn't be able to at least engage, assess they are outgunned, and then safely run away. With a bit of experience, you'll seldom need to check monster challenge ratings or the XP budget again. Thanks for watching this quick video today. I'm still recovering from a flu, but hopefully this supplement will help you get your head around appropriately balanced yet engaging combats. If you'd like to help me make more content like this in the future, please consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a channel member. Thanks for watching, Dungeon Masters, and until next time, good night.